Thank you.
No internet connection at all. I'm having to speak from my mobile. So basically, today, Dr. Basu is going to give his presentation. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
Can everybody mute their mics, please? There's too much of. I think Nalini, Rajesh, your mics are on. Debasis, please mute you.
Everyone mute themselves. It'll be much better that way. As I said, I have no internet connection at the moment, so I'm having to use the tower on mobile. Please, everyone mute themselves, please. So Dr. Basu is going to give his presentation on the growth of consciousness in children and the role that adults can play in this particular process. I think a lot of you have been waiting for this particular session with a great deal of enthusiasm. So over to you, Dr. Basu, and let's hope it goes well.
So thank you. So James, you are outside. You are outside the building.
Yes.
So you have the net connection there. The tower is there.
I have the tower, mobile. It's my mobile.
Oh,
so you take over, okay? The session is being recorded as well. So you take over, and after 45 minutes, we'll have a break of 10 minutes for everyone to assimilate what you've said, okay?
So we'll be just a minute in silence. We'll be a minute in silence as we do every day, and then we start.
In silence,
so
please.
We'll be in silence for a minute.
Themselves. Yes. I don't want to say something more. How do I?
So thank you all. We'll start today's session, and a very good morning to you all. And we'll stop at the end of 45 minutes for about 10 minutes. So I'll begin today's session. I'm audible? Am I audible? Is okay?
Yes, sir. Yes, okay.
Yes, you are, Dr. Basu. Yes.
So I will begin today's session with 2 or 3 lines from Aurobindo brother Manmohan Ghosh's famous poem Augustus Dearest, a poem on the mother principle. As you know, that Aurobindo had 3 brothers, and one of the elder brothers, Manmohan Ghosh, was a very accomplished poet and was a professor of literature and was always immersed in poetry, and he wrote marvelous poetry which is not very much known to the outside world. So I will just read 3-4 lines from the last lines of his very famous poem on the mother principle, and we start because that gives us an impetus. Goddess, at whose dim heart the world's deep charm, tears, terrors, throbbing things were yet to be? She, from whose tearing pangs in glory first, I and the infinite white heavens burst? So there's a question mark. He ends with a question mark. She, from whose tearing pangs in glory first. So we are born from the tearing pangs in glory of the mother principle. Now the mother giving birth to the child is having a glorious period in her life, and in that glorious period, it is that glorious period is filled with pangs and tears. And then I am being born, and how I am being born? I and the infinite wide heavens burst. So I am not only being born alone in flesh and blood, but I am being also born with the infinite wide heavens. So I am being born with a consciousness. I am being born with an infinite consciousness. So like as you say that Chit Shakti, we have been derived from the Chit Shakti of the Satchidananda. So like that we also individually are, every one of us, each one of us is an idea and a force at the same time, and each one of us has been given the gateway to a great consciousness which we can develop. And if we say that what is the role of the adults? The role of the adults in this very big game or this very big phenomenon is that to help the baby to come out and to achieve that consciousness in life, to achieve that high consciousness in life. So that is the aim of our what you call the adults who will be supervising our children from the birth until they grow up to be adults and take on their adult roles independently of us. Now you see these children, things of children are all known to many of you, and there are a number of doctors here also, psychologists are also here. So I will just speak a certain number of things, few things which the mother had emphasized and which were important for rearing up children, and things which apparently might seem a bit trivial, but which we do not give that importance. First is that to remember that consciousness actually begins even before birth. So even before the child is born, the mothers have to be ready, they have to be conscious themselves, because they are going to create a conscious being. They are going to create a conscious being, and that work starts from before the birth of the child. And as mother said, that true maternity, which is the conscious creation of a body in such a way that that new body we have to house a new soul. So true maternity is a conscious creation of a body, a conscious creation of a body, and that body has to be such that it is new, that body which is new will also have a space to house a new soul, and a soul which is very beautiful, which is noble, which is going to be grand, which is going to give different values to life than you expect. And that is why if you consider it from this angle, mother said that maternity, it becomes something very deep. It becomes actually a spiritual phenomenon. True maternity, if you are going to give a conscious birth to a baby, which is consciousness means not only the body but also the soul that the body will be holding, then you are actually transcending your maternity from the biological, psychological to a spiritual perspective. And that is why she said you begin from the time when you have become pregnant, you try to be in your best self, in your highest consciousness, and try to surround yourself with the best possible things. And then mother used to give examples of ancient Greece, where would-be mothers would be placed in rooms where there used to be art objects, there used to be beautiful art objects, and the mothers were trained to gaze at the art objects. And mother has said many times that this gazing at the art objects, and if it is done very consciously, and at that time it was believed that if you do it very consciously, then you can have children who have got something in their form which is beautiful, in their bodily form something can be beautiful, and if physically this beauty can be transmitted, then from the psychological realm, how much more powerful would be if you make a psychological formation that the baby that is going to be born will have a new type of consciousness which is going to manifest in through all sorts of psychological values and principles. So if you do that, if physically this is possible, then psychologically it would be more powerful, and that is why she was always telling that would-be mothers should be in a poise, in a place, in a space where they would get all sorts of stimulation, so that they can develop their consciousness. So one thing was aesthetics, that they should be surrounded by aesthetic things, and they should be exposed to aesthetic stimuli, like the aesthetic stimuli of music. So you can have the classical music going on. It has been shown also in many psychological experiments that you have classical music going on during the time when you are pregnant. Then when the children are born, they are receptive to music. They are receptive to music. So in many different ways you can design that. You can design that this kind of milieu which actually enhances the consciousness of the baby which is going to be born. So the main thing is that we have to shift to a maternity which is very rich, which is very true. And then mother said, you see, like that she was also talking as if she was also an adept in science. She was saying that the moment we say that we want that the mother has to be creative, but it is difficult because ordinarily we are never trained to be creative. Our problem is that we are never trained to be creative. What we know by creativity, you see, even in the outside world, if you ask what is creativity or how do people understand creativity, then you will see that very few people know what is true creativity. An artist can see a very beautiful scenery and can draw that picture, or can write, and a poet can write a poem after seeing a very beautiful landscape, but that is mostly descriptive. It is not always creative. You see, writing a poetry or drawing a picture doesn't mean that you are creative. It might be that you are just reproducing descriptions of very good things. True creativity comes from a very high plane of consciousness, which is true creativity, which is different. But we do not know how to be creative. So when we tell mothers that you are going to create a baby, often we tell that like an artist manifesting something on the canvas, you are also trying to create a baby and be creative, then it doesn't follow that the mother is creatively doing that, though she might try. What usually happens, that the mother comes up with a magnification of the ideas she has of what is good. So she has an idea, every person has an idea of what is good, what is great, what is grand, and one magnifies those ideas, and by magnification of those ideas, the seeds the mother takes from what is there in her own subconscious. So it is in the mother's subconscious, the ideas or the what you call the impressions are there, that what is going to be grand, what is going to be great, and it is the mother who picks up something from the subconscious and magnifies those things, and that is how she thinks that she is creating something. But that is not true creativity. On the other hand, mother says that when you do that, you see, this is mother's word, that when you do that, you are falling prey to two things, to hereditary influences and to atavistic influences. You see, she was so particular. Even from the point of psychology, she was so particular that when she says that when you are thinking that you are doing something greatly creative, you are actually bringing out these ideas from your subconscious of your concept of greatness, and you are magnifying them, and in the process what you are doing, you are succumbing yourself to hereditary influences and to atavistic influences. You see, atavistic influences are also very important. That all the things that we manifest are not only come from our hereditary tree, but they have also come from our atavistic influences through evolution, from even the species that have preceded us, they have come. And then that is not true creativity. True creativity is something which you have to bring from a very, very high consciousness. And so we'll do, tomorrow I think we'll do these exercises of true creativity, how we can increase our creativity. I have a mind that tomorrow we will be mostly doing our exercises. We will start doing it today, but tomorrow we will go into that. That true creativity is coming, you are bringing inspiration from a very high consciousness, from a very, very high consciousness, and if you can do that, then you will be invoking a completely new consciousness which has never manifested in your family tree, in your hereditary tradition, in your background, in your family background. It has never manifested. So like that, of course, we see in our outer life that great children were born in families or in social settings where you cannot dream that such a manifestation could have happened. But great creative geniuses have come, many of them have come in unexpected settings. So like that, that thing clicked, something happened, something came from the very high creative consciousness, something came and something manifested which transcended all the hereditary limitations and transcended all the genetic traits, and something was entirely new, which has never manifested before in your hereditary line, in your family tree. And this is what the mother wants, that you have to bring a very new consciousness. And you see that it is possible. For example, if you see in parents who are adopting children from a very, very tender age, at a very early age when children are adopted, the children also imbibe the characteristics of the parents even without being there, even without the genetics, even without the genes. You see, through consciousness you can transmit also what you want, your consciousness, the consciousness of the parents can also be transmitted through the realm of consciousness to the children also. So that is possible, but that is a very, very difficult thing. Usually it is not possible unless you are exceptional, you are exceptionally blessed, as many mothers have been blessed with geniuses, even though the social settings were not conducive for it, and in general also. But we have to develop our creativity, our consciousness to that extent, so that we can always fulfill this role of being of manifesting a true maternity, which can actually blossom something entirely new. So this is one very important thing. The other important thing that the mother always emphasized, and which is known in psychology, but the mother took great pains to emphasize, that the sensory training of children should be very authentic, very thorough, very complete. Now this is interesting in one sense. If you ask me what is the greatest contribution of Indian psychology, in the psychology that is spread out in the Indian spiritual tradition, what is there? What is the most important thing there? Then I would always tell that the first and the basic contribution of Indian psychology or the Indian parampara, in the psychological parampara in the Indian tradition, is that there are ways of acquiring knowledge other than sensory perception and reason. Other than sensory perception and reason. You see, sensory perception is the first gateway to knowledge. The first thing that we approach the world is through our senses. And afterwards the rationality comes, the mind comes, the cognitive principle comes, and we know the world by our reason, by our reasoning intelligence. But in the Indian tradition discovered that there are supra-rational ways of acquiring knowledge too. But you can only go to the supra-rational techniques of acquiring knowledge which is coming from a very high consciousness, knowledge which is coming from a very different source. You can only go there after your sensory training is complete and thorough. If your sensory training, if your sensory education is not complete and thorough, you can't expect to transcend the senses. You will be always pulled back, because the senses are the primary basic things in our system, in our biological system. The senses are a primary and basic thing. So to transcend the senses, you have to have a very thorough exploration of your senses. Otherwise you can't do that. You can't go to that extent. For example, if you see Beethoven was deaf. Beethoven was deaf, and he couldn't hear his music. But at the time when he was dying, the last words of Beethoven was, you see, the last words while he was dying, he uttered, "I shall hear in heaven. I shall hear in heaven." Now what does that mean? What did Beethoven mean by saying, "I shall hear in heaven"? Because he has never heard in his life his music, because he was deaf. What the meaning was, that the meaning is there in the Indian tradition. In the Indian tradition, we always say that very, very great music has been brought down from the supernal spheres, and in the very high consciousness, in the supernal spheres, in the greatest superconscious realms, that is music, but that music doesn't strike a surface. So, as that music doesn't strike a surface, there is no sound. There is no sound.
Thank you.
Yes. Some problem with microphones, no?
Dada, actually 3 people have their microphones on. Dr. Prafulla Kumar Mishra, Srinivasa Murthy and Mridula Singh Ji. Can you please mute your microphones?
Okay.
But you could have heard that what I was saying so long?
Yes.
Okay. So I was talking about Beethoven, that there is this in that very superconscious realm of music, where the music doesn't strike a surface, there is no sound, that is soundless music. In Sanskrit it is called Anahata Vani. And it is the great musicians who bring music from that sphere. That is why it is not necessary that you have to hear that, because if you are in touch with that consciousness, that music will automatically come to you. Now that is why Beethoven could say that because he knew that what he was producing was the music which was an ethereal music, which is a music in some other sphere, of consciousness, in some heavenly sphere of consciousness. That's why he could say that I shall hear in heaven. So that I shall continue my music. My music shall be continued, because my music is there in the eternal spheres. Now, this kind of realization you cannot have unless the sensory training of the children is complete. So you come down to earthly reality, and you have to see that the sensory training is exhaustive and complete. And there I would say that I think one of the best expositions has been given by Dr. Winnicott, a famous child psychiatrist who was very famous for child psychiatry, and who had a series of BBC lectures where he used to exactly say what the mother wanted in a more exhaustive and very detailed form, that give the time for the full sensory experience to be lived, to be gone through. So you have to give the child the full time. What I mean is, for example, in our ashram school in Pondicherry, in the kindergarten, the elderly musicians of repute come, and they play a full piece of music in front of the children. You see, not half the music or a fragment of the music. They play a full piece of music that they were supposed to play. They would have played to an audience of music lovers or people who understood music. So they do the same thing to the children. And you could see the kindergarten children sitting there like very wise people, listening very intently to the music. And then because the ears are getting trained, and because of that, when they pass out of kindergarten, they can be introduced to a wide variety of musical instruments. And that is only possible because the sensory training was done in such a way that they should have the complete experience that was kept in mind. So like that, when the babies are born also, very, very small things, extremely small things, you have to be careful that their full experience has to be lived. Now, it was always there, mothers always gave time, but nowadays, because of social media, mothers might become very, very busy, and can stop halfway or leave halfway between that experience, or because mothers get too many sermons. You see, if mothers are left to themselves, they can do the natural mothering. But too many sermons from other women, elderly women, or from social media and all, they can also interfere in the mother's natural functioning. They may or may not interfere, but unfortunately, quite sometimes they interfere with mother's natural functioning, and then mother's intuition gets lost. But you see, a very, very simple things that I would tell, it's not for the doctors here, but for the people who are not acquainted with the medical process of rearing up of children, or the psychological process. I would just share a few points which might be a bit boring for the people who are already in psychology field. Like for example, a small baby who has been born, who knows the world by the senses, and has that sweet warm milk in the mouth, which is very nice. He's enjoying, the baby is enjoying the sweetness and the warmth of the milk. And when the milk has gone down from his mouth below, he wants to have that experience again. So he brings up, the baby brings up the milk to his mouth again and again, and the mothers can get frightened that what has happened, that is some regurgitation, or I have to take the child to a doctor. But if the mother is silent, then after some time she will see that it is a process that is self-limiting. After some days the child gets accustomed to it, and then the child will automatically take it playfully. You see, you are giving a full time for the sensory experience. Even Professor Winnicott used to repeatedly say that burping we do, that because always there is a amount of milk and air in the stomach, and sometimes if you are in a hurry, then the milk and air can they can collide, and there is a discomfort, and that's why you have to do that burping by patting on the shoulder of the child, holding it upright. But he used to always say that burping, don't make burping a ritual. If the mother is silent, if you are very silent and composed and calm, then while you are feeding, the milk and the air, they will go to their proper places, automatically, spontaneously by themselves. You don't have to be always ritualistic in doing that burping. See that silence is silence. To be silent means what? It's not only that you are being patient, but you are allowing the full sensory experience of the child, because the child knows the world by the experience, and that sensation you have to give the time to complete. If you don't give that time to complete, then afterwards the child will suffer from all these consequences of these broken experiences. Like after a baby has taken milk, the baby lies down, and you see the baby is very pleased and enjoying the milk in the stomach. You see the baby enjoys that milk in the stomach, and there is a gurgling sound after some time when from the stomach the milk goes into the small intestine. Up to that point, the baby goes on feeding the milk, and up to that point, feeding has not been completed. So when you have fed the baby and you lay the baby on the cot and the baby is enjoying the milk in the stomach till that gurgling sound, the feeding process has not ended. You have to be silent, you have to be by the side of the baby, you have to see that there is no disturbance. You should not yourself also rock the baby or move it or stimulate it or shake it. The ordinary things that we do, untimely we do it, and then we do not know that we are interfering with the baby's sensory experience. You see, if we do that, then from the very beginning there will be a problem with the digestion, with the problem with enjoying that food, and these problems will come up in later life with some somatic complaints or the other. So like that, it is the same thing with the control of the bowel and the bladder, that these are things that the child learns by playing. You see that playing, they are holding the urine and retaining the urine and releasing it. That is a sensation. That is a sensation in holding, and there is a sensation in releasing, which is very beautiful, which is very pleasant. And if you allow the child to play that game, automatically the control will come. With what happens with the bowel, and it especially happens with the obsessive mothers, you see that the child has passed a bit of stool, and after you see there is a movement in the rectum and a stool has been passed, and the mother cleans the stool, and after 10 minutes again a small wave comes in the rectum and a little bit of stool is passed again, but the mother comes and the mother doesn't say anything. The mother cleans the stool, but she frowns a bit. Even 10 minutes before I had cleaned, and now he has again passed the stool, and the baby notices that. Baby notices the frown on the mother's face, and if the frown goes on like that, after some time the baby will withhold the stool, and if the stool is withheld, then the water will be absorbed, the stool will become hard, and that's the starting of chronic constipation. If you find the cases of chronic constipation much later in life, then quite some of their mothers have been quite obsessive and fussy while they were rearing the child. The main thing is this, that they were because of their obsession or because of some other reasons, they were not giving the time to the child to have a full play of their sensory experience. It's like that with the games that we play with the child. The first game that we play with the child, is peep-bo, where the mother hides herself behind the curtain, and the baby knows that the mother is not there, but when the curtain is pushed aside, and you see the baby's eyes, they are so astonished to discover the same mother whom they thought mother might have been lost. And you play such kind of game again and again with patience, with love, and with an understanding that this game is necessary for the child's growth, then the child will have a sense of continuity, that the mother is always there. The mother is always there. Also that comes through breastfeeding also. This sense of continuity comes because the child has an idea to take milk and the mother gives the milk. After some time the idea drops away and the child takes away the face from the mother's breast, and the mother also does some other thing. She doesn't mind. But after 10 minutes the baby again has an idea that I will again take the mother's milk, and the mother is not annoyed. She is again there to press her breast so that the baby can take the milk. That when I want, I have the mother. When I didn't want the milk, the mother was not pestering me. And when I again wanted the milk, mother was again there to give me the milk. This kind of experience again and again fosters that sense of continuity, that sense of security. And only when the child has a sense of continuity, sense of security, that the mother is always there, then only the baby will try to do adventures. The adventure of the baby is to go and crawl and to see what is there underneath the table, behind the almirah, underneath the bed. So these are great, very, very great adventures of the baby. And the baby will not do such an adventure unless one has a sense of security. And this sense of security and the sense of, it comes also from a sense of continuity, because the mother is always there. And this comes only if we are very patient and we allow the child to, allow the baby to play the whole game of the sensory experience. So this is something we have to give, and the mother is to emphasize. The mother is to emphasize again and again in Pondicherry ashram. She is to say that the education of the child begins when you have to give a thorough exposition to the senses. And you should not think that spirituality means from the very beginning you have to transcend the senses, transcend sensual satisfaction and all that. Only if you have known and experienced your senses, only then you are ready to transcend your senses. Otherwise it is not so easy. If you have disregarded your senses, then it will come back afterwards in life, and it will take its toll, it will take its revenge. Remember, it will take its revenge. So the playing with the babies is very important. You see that one very important thing that you all know is that the babies don't understand anything, but we go on talking with the baby, because unless we talk with the baby, the vocabulary doesn't develop. See, for the vocabulary to develop, you have to talk with the baby. We have seen that in our psychiatry practice. We see that in babies who have been taken to the jails by their mothers. You see, often young mothers, when they are jailed as criminals and they have babies, they are taken to the jail. And in the jail, nobody talks to the babies except for some motivation or some dhanda. Otherwise, like that, to increase vocabulary, nobody talks. And when these babies grow up to be 10, 12-year-olds, and we bring them to our child care homes, we see that they are intelligent, but they can never study anything. We can never make them understand anything. We can never make them study anything. Never possible. You see, because nobody has talked with them, and that sense of vocabulary is never there. It never develops like that. So that's why it is very important that we give our quality, our very much, of course, our quality time to the children, and that quality time you have to give very precise. Now you can say, some people say that why we have to do that? Why you have to do that? The animals don't give time to, you don't have to spend so much time on their babies. The babies themselves become automatically, they become so self-dependent. As there is, the animal life is different from the human life. We could have also done that. Our children could also be competent after they had been born, if their brains had developed to a great extent before they were born. But that is not possible. If you have a great brain, then the brain will not come out, the head will not come out from the narrow passage from which the baby is born, from the mother's narrow passage. So that is not possible. So we have to accept the fact that we have to give time to our children, and that time you cannot compromise. So now I will talk about some other very occult things that are also happening, this is something which was known in psychology. Only mother is amplifying and giving more importance to them, because she is wanting to transcend the senses in a way where after the sensory training is complete, so that the senses will not take revenge when you transcend them. Otherwise, in adult life, when you become a great yogi and you have gone to high planes of consciousness, and you have come down from your samadhi, then your senses will come up and you will fall into the trap of the apsaras dancing in front of you. It is not so easy. It's not so easy. to transcend the senses. Unless you had thorough exposition of your senses, only then, at a certain point in inner development or spiritual development, much later in life, whatever is going to drop, like your attachment to sex and other things, they will drop automatically. Only if all the training is very complete and you are thorough with it. So it is very important. Now we'll talk about some very occult things, which are of course, which mother always used to say, but which is also not that, which is not possible to discuss in outside very limited forums. And one is that, as you said, that the soul or the psychic principle or the soul principle or the psychic being, which is a four-dimensional principle, mother said that most of the time, it is during childbirth, when the child is being born, the psychic being comes and joins, you see, joins with the system, joins with the being. So the psychic being is in the psychic world, and it can, if it is a very evolved psychic being, it can choose its own place where it is going to be born. Where it is going to be born, it can choose its own place. If you are very interested to know how it can choose its own place, how it can be born, or how great yogis can also facilitate that process, you can read that first-hand accounts of an autobiography of an Indian yogi by Swami Yogananda, where he shows that he, with willpower, how he facilitated the birth of a certain soul in a certain place, in a certain setting, in a certain in a certain couple. He had experimented with it, and that very moving experiments and very detailed way he has discussed that in a very credible book, Autobiography of an Indian Yogi by Swami Yogananda. Now what happens is that the psychic being, you see, after a person departs, when a person departs, the psychic being goes to the psychic world, it takes rest there, and then it will come and it will join the baby when it is getting born. And it, of course, at that first time it is like a spark, it is joining as a soul spark, which will afterwards develop. But this is very important, this is a very important phenomenon. And after the psychic being has been born, and after a certain time, there is also another phenomenon that will take place. That's the vital being, that the emotional repertoire, that will also develop. But that will also, you see, it is also very difficult to understand this like that unless you know the whole phenomenon of how evolution and involution in Sri Aurobindo scheme happens. So in Sri Aurobindo scheme of things, that when evolution happens, something, and Nisas presses from downwards. See, something is pressing from downwards to evolve, to manifest. But at the same time, from a side, something is also coming from the side, from some other world. So there are two movements that are happening. Now, from other world means which world? So before evolution, before anything could evolve, something got involved. You see, evolution doesn't happen from a zero. Evolution happens from the inconscious, where the superconscious has become involved. The principles have become involved, and it is these principles that are going to evolve one by one. Now that involvement of the superconscious in the inconscious, it is not a haphazard thing. It is also a very organized thing. It also occurs in a very organized hierarchical way, and that organized hierarchical way, where the consciousness descends from above and comes down into the inconscious, that Sri Aurobindo called involution, and while in its descent it creates separate planes, and from that planes also influences come when the evolution is happening. So when the evolution is happening, the pressure from down to come up, that is there, that is the main thing, that is the prime mover, that is the prime motivator of evolution. But at the same time, something also from the side is coming at every plane, something or the other is coming. And at a certain point in time, there is an influence of the vital plane of the consciousness that is also coming while the child's emotions are developing. But something from behind, in the subtle emotional world, something from there is also coming and also joining and facilitating that process of developing that emotions. Now, why it is very important? Very, very important from the occult point of view, because we have seen that there are children who have very nice soul sparks, there is a very sweet soul presence in them, but their emotional being is very disturbed. Their emotional being is very, very disturbed. And when these children grow up, though they might have a very sweetness in their personality, but because their emotional being is very disturbed, they can always have a life which is full of disharmony. You see that everything is important. The body is important, the emotions are important, behind the soul spark, that is also important, and the mind, of course, that is going to manifest afterwards, that is also going to be very important, more important. But unless the soul spark is there behind, and the emotions and they come at the proper place at the proper time. The emotions manifest with the help of the influences that are coming from below, they automatically, and from the influences that are coming from the side, from the emotional reservoir that is there in the cosmic consciousness. In the cosmic consciousness there is an emotional reservoir. From there also the influence is coming simultaneously, and if from there negative influences can also come. It is not always that positive influences come. From there negative influences can come. From there you see that vital, where the emotional repertoire is represented, is also the it is also the place where the life energy is there. So the universal life energy is there in the cosmic consciousness, and from that life energy many things come, many influences come, and disturbed energies can come. Disturbed energies can come, disturbed influences can come, so the child might become disturbed from a very early age. I cannot say with certainty, but myself I had an experience once that usually around the age of 1.5 years, this intrusion from the cosmic emotional consciousness that becomes consolidated at the time of 1.5 years, and you will see that many of our problematic cases in child psychiatry, like autism, childhood schizophrenia and all, they become very apparently discernible. People can understand that these kind of things are going to happen, that the child is not going to be normal like other children. Some disturbance or other can happen. It is usually around 1.5 years, around 18 months, that people or afterwards, that parents begin to feel that something is going to be different. So why I am saying this is very important. Even in afterwards, in later life also, even doesn't mean that everything has become negative, but that vital influence that has come from the cosmic consciousness and the vital that has developed in you together to form your first individual vital, which might not be as stable as it was, as desirable as you desire. And if it is not as stable, then many things in life which you could have done, it is not possible, or it might not see the light of the day. I will just remind of a very personal thing which one very elderly sadhika in the ashram told me once about mother telling this thing about someone else. That mother was telling about a very important of her instruments who was doing great work in the world, but mother told this sadhika that I wanted to help him more. I wanted to help him more so that he could produce more productive work in the world of spiritual value. But because his soul is very sweet and very sensitive, but his vital is not that strong. Because his vital is not that strong, the vital which contains the life energy, which contains our strong emotions. So because that which contains our dynamism, so because that area is not strong, so I can't give that push. I can't give that push. So that is why whenever mothers pray that they should have a nice child, I say, pray that not only that you should have a nice soul coming to you, pray that there should be a nice body, the child should have a healthy body, and child should have a healthy life energy, that is not perverted, that is not deviated, that doesn't suffer all kind of distortions. You pray for that also, because that is also very important. So this you have to remember, that many adolescents, many young adults we see in later life, we want to help them because they have got some depth in them, great depth in their thinking, great sweetness in their soul, but then there's sort of disharmony in their personality, in their structure, because the vital is very disturbed. The emotional repertoire, the life energy is totally in a chaos. For example, I will tell you one of my very close friends who is a doctor, and at the same time he is an artist, and at the same time he is an ardent communist, totally atheist, and but he has an outer life which is totally disastrous, a totally disastrous outer life. And then he took me, you see, this is when it struck me that the importance of the vital. He took one book from me from Sri Aurobindo's poem in quantitative meters. You see that it was I think about 10 to 12 poems were there, not much, and with Bengali translations and of the English poems. That also been translations were done by non-Bengali, by Prithvi Singh Nahar, who was a Jain. And he told me after reading the poems something which people who have come to Sri Aurobindo for sadhana, they can understand after many years. He told me just at a glance by seeing the poems, oh, I understand that the very important concept in Sri Aurobindo's teaching is the concept of descent of the consciousness, which I was telling, that the superconscious descended into the inconscious to so that the evolution can start. Now it is a very difficult thing to understand, because that descent, how it is descending in an organized way, creating planes, no? Typal planes. Typal planes means planes which do not evolve. It is extremely difficult. It is something related to occultism. You can't just club it to psychology and other things and present it. So I am not doing that here. But it is very difficult to understand. But you see, he understood that concept. But at the same time, he was living a totally disorganized life, because in spite of that very nice thinking pattern he had, very nice soul presence he had, the energy, life energy, the vital was disturbed and disrupted like anything. And that starts from very beginning when one is a child. So you have to understand that every aspect of the personality, every aspect of the consciousness is very important. If the physical is important, the vital is important, the cognition is important, and the soul presence, the psychic being which is there, or the soul that is going to come into front, that is also very important. And the thing that you have to remember, that the mother says that the soul is in affinity with the physical consciousness, the more than it is in affinity with the mind or with the emotions. The soul is in affinity more with the physical consciousness than with the what you call the emotions and the mind, because the mind has a lot of complexities and the emotional repertoire has a lot of turbulences. But the physical consciousness is innocent. The physical consciousness doesn't have hypocrisy, no? The physical consciousness is just physical. So there is no complication in it, no manipulation in it, no turbulence in it. It's just physical. And that's why that it is the children who actually can manifest the divine presence. You see, in the Bible it is written, it is the children who can go to the kingdom of God, who shall enter the kingdom of God. It is because the children are in the physical consciousness and they don't have that manipulation of the emotions or the idiosyncrasies of the thinking, that they are open, they are free, they are spontaneous. So that is why the physical consciousness has to be developed. That is the great reason why the physical consciousness has to be developed. We think that the physical consciousness has to develop only because we have to have a healthy body, but that is one part of the picture. If you see from mother's angle, it is not only that you are going to have a healthy body, unless you have a very refined physical consciousness, you cannot also have a space for the soul to manifest. For the soul to manifest, you have to have a very nice physical consciousness, and that is why children are so pure, children are so innocent. Children are very pure, children are innocent, and in a setting of children, you yourself can feel that vibration of innocence that is there in the children. So this is very important that we have to understand, and then the other thing then we have to develop naturally, because the divine is in close affinity with the physical. The divine is in close affinity with beauty. It follows like that. Because in the physical, beauty is spontaneously present. The beauty of the flowers, the beauty of the rivers, the beauty of the mountains, the beauty of nature, that is spontaneous there in the physical consciousness. And that is why the sense of beauty has to be cultivated. Otherwise, your physical training will not be complete. You see, sense of beauty, sense of aesthetics is not only for your emotional reservoir. That is for secondary thing. The first thing that you have to start, you presenting or developing the aesthetic sense of children. That is very important thing. That is, once the sensory training preliminary is complete, the second thing that you have to develop is the aesthetic sense that you have to develop, and that is necessary. Of course, it is necessary for your vital, it is necessary for your mind, for different reasons. You see, for different reasons they are necessary for at different levels. But for the body, it is very necessary because it is primary, it is basic, and there is a natural and spontaneous affinity. And that is why, because the physical is beauty, beauty manifests in the physical, that is why we offer flowers everywhere to the divine, because the flower is representing beauty in its most pristine, primitive and spontaneous mode. That is why we offer flowers to the divine, and children also like flowers. So we have to always give them aesthetic. Now, what do you mean by saying you will be telling me that I am saying something philosophical? What is that to do with practical things? I will tell you, it is very practical if you remember this. You see, we were having a game when we were very small children. We were having a game where we are following a trail. We are following a trail in a treasure hunt. In a treasure hunt, we were to go in a treasure hunt. We were very small children, and we were following a trail which would lead to the treasure. and the train was composed of very beautifully decorated and aesthetically pleasing pieces of artwork. So all this very decorated, very aesthetically pleasing, very beautiful artwork was there, scattered all over the way, and we had to collect them, and they were very beautiful artworks. Artworks made in paper, artworks made in other things other than paper, and they were so beautiful, so delicate, so nicely done. So we picked them up very nicely and we stored them very properly until we reached the place where the treasure was kept, where we took some time to understand what was the treasure. At that time the treasure actually were apples hanging from the thread from trees, and then we understood that the apples don't hang from threads. So this must be the treasure. So we were very small children at that time. Now when I grew up and I conducted the same game with small children, then I was not I was not so careful about the aesthetic presentation of the things that we leave in the trail. So they will pick up something from the trail, but we did something. Me and my friends, we are organizing for the children, and when we did it, we were not so much careful about the things that we leave in the trail, because they have to pick up the trail, and all the things that we left there, they were not aesthetically beautiful as it was in during our times. So we just cobbled this thing here, cobbled that thing there, we just sketched something here, we give some pieces of things which were just dumped, we just dumped them. We didn't aesthetically place them, nor aesthetically design them. And the children also didn't show any justice to them. They just picked up them randomly and without any, without honoring them, and they just put them into their pockets and without seeing them again, because they knew that it is something which is not that important. It is just the tail that they have to follow, but the thing by itself has no importance, so there is just no value. You see, the same game, we did it without any aesthetic designing of the things that we leave in the trail, and the children responded differently. Our times we had responded differently only because their presentation was different. So you see that aesthetic sense is such an important thing. Even in training in children, everything that you give to them should be very aesthetic. And to be aesthetic also, the first thing that we have to remember when you are introducing things to children, like arts, the proper, when you present figures to children, human figures or animal figures, you must be very careful that the body parts are proportionately represented. The body parts should not be disproportionate. You should not give disproportionate things to children. This will not create a good impression. Good aesthetic impression also it will not be created. Aesthetic impression can only be created if you can give them the correct anatomical imprint, or the correct anatomical impression of the figure or the form that is needed, because every form in nature has been created beautifully and has been created by some other idea which is there in the subtle physical. Yesterday I was talking about the subtle physical. In the subtle physical, the idea of the form crystallizes, and then that form materializes in the material world. So that form that you see in the outer world today has been actually prepared in the subtle physical, and then you have to remember that is you have to give importance to that. So the forms are very important, and you cannot distort forms. You should not give distorted forms to children while you are presenting pictures, while you are exposing them to statues, you are exposing them to different kind of art objects. You should be very, very careful that they should be exposed to the correct proportionate things which will actually stimulate their activity in the right direction. And of course, for the sensory stimuli, you have to expose children to all kinds of sensory stimulation. Otherwise, they will not enjoy the world. That is also the work at a very primary level. So if a child is not taken to a botanical garden, how will he know that what is botany, what are the leaves, what are the plants? How? You see, the maximum sensory stimulation you have to give to them by exposing their senses to as much as possible which they can receive. So this is very important, and even when you are taking children for a vacation, you have to remember that why you are taking the children for a vacation. Either you must take them to see a natural scenery, place where a natural scenery is beautiful, or you take them to a place which is full of historical importance, or you take them to a place which has a spiritual value. But you should plan everything and design everything so that leaves an impression in the mind which is not only at the level of the concept, or the level of aesthetics, at the level of senses. Everywhere it gives an impression which is solid. You don't do it haphazardly. So everything planned for your children. So this is one thing, that when we do something for children, our responsibility is to plan everything. plan everything as you plan things in your office. The more important thing is to plan things for your children. Moreover, to see the children going is a very enjoyable thing in life. I think we'll stop here for 10 minutes because this is children's thing can go on, but these are things which you already know. These are things that because 45 minutes have just passed. These are things that you already know all these things. But I will say that the main thing is that we have to help a child to grow up in consciousness, and for that we have to work through consciousness. We have to give inputs through consciousness, and the consciousness, training of the consciousness starts with the senses. Now we'll finish this. We'll not go into this topic further. When you have questions, you can add to your experiences. Many of you have reared up children, have taught children in the school, and have seen children as doctors, and you will be able to contribute more. I think that your contributions or enhancing this knowledge of what we have discussed would be very important. At the same time, just after this break, we will be coming up with exercises. We will start, which is actually we will be continuing tomorrow, where we are more dealing with our personal growth. So we will start it from today, the preliminary exercises, so that tomorrow when we do it, we are already ready to be in a very practical mode. So we'll switch off for 10 minutes.
Back in 10 minutes, everyone. Back in 10 minutes.
Dada, am I audible? Is it possible to ask a question now? Hello?
Our partners, huh? Huh? अभी नंबर के सीखोते को घरी दे इनका मुझे तो बोलते हैं ना तुम्हारे रहते ना ना आ गया अच्छा ब्रेक दिए कोई आराम হবে চল খাবার ব্রেক আচ্ছা এই কতক্ষণ আগে ছাড়লেন 10 মিনিট বলেছি 10 মিনিট হতে গেল 10 মিনিট হয়ে গেছে কেন না না এমনি জিজ্ঞাসা করছি যে কতক্ষণ হলো একটা না সেটার জন্য 1 ঘন্টা মানে টাইম আধা ঘন্টার মতো কম হলো আসলে চলো জলটা তো বেশি চলে এসছে আজকে কি মানে যেটা বলা হয়ে গেছে এরপরে আবার বলো না ওই গলাটা শেষ হবে এই পার্টে আজকে বলাটা শেষ হচ্ছে কালকে আজকে আর
I think most of the people are back, Dr. Basu. I think we can start again now. ইন্টারন্যাশনাল কল হচ্ছে বাইরে বিদেশ থেকে লোকজন আসছে তো আমাদের ফোন করছে Can you hear me, Dr. Basu? Can you hear me?
We can start.
Yeah, let's start again. Yeah. I think most of the people are back.
So we start?
Yeah.
So we'll shift to the topic that we are going to actually discuss tomorrow. We'll start it from here because we want to do certain practical things by which we can get connected with our spiritual consciousness. The most important thing is that how to bring spirituality or the high things that we are talking about of consciousness, how do we bring it into our practical life? For that, we ourselves have to be ready. we ourselves have to be, we have to connect with the source, we have to connect with our depths, we have to know how to rise up in consciousness, how to widen our consciousness, and how to deepen our consciousness. So all these three things we have to know ourselves, and then only we can do something for in our professional field or other fields where we are working. We can do that, we can contribute that to our other fields in life, even our family, our societies. We cannot do anything unless we ourselves have started working on ourselves. You see, that is a preliminary thing. Even in psychoanalysis, one has to analyze oneself, and then one is fit for psychoanalysis. So in the spiritual line, this is more important, that you cannot go and give sermons like that with an empty consciousness. So you have to have a consciousness that has been worked upon. Of course, it is an ongoing process. Throughout your life you have to work, you have to go on working. It is not going to finish in this, might be not finish in this life. You have to go to several lives working on your consciousness. So I'm always working and working. You have to always do that. Keeping up that spirit, that as Aurobindo said in Savitri poem, one line in Savitri was there, a new beginning has only been made. So always in life you have to have that spirit, that it is a new beginning that you are making today. In life, every day when you start with working on consciousness, start with this attitude that today you have started a new beginning. Only then, and you will remain young, and you will remain fresh in your thinking. And the moment you think that I have done a lot of things in life, I am very experienced in consciousness work and all, I have achieved so many things in this and that, and my consciousness is already so much enriched that I don't need anything else. The moment you think that, then that is the beginning of your inner death. So because consciousness is inexhaustible, endless, and you cannot say that I have become a mature person. Always you will remain a little less mature than what you could have thought you could have been. Anyway, we'll start certain basic thing. Tomorrow we will be working at different planes of consciousness, where we try to see that how we can develop our inner mind, our inner vital, our inner physical. So these are things that we'll try to do tomorrow. But before that, today we have to do a more basic thing. Otherwise, then only those things will become relevant. We have to do a very basic thing today. We will practice so that those things become relevant tomorrow when we do it. Now, the first thing is this: that why we should start doing this. Why we should start doing this? The main thing that we should, this basic thing that we are going to do is what I started with. How in ourselves we can be ready for spirituality in practical life. How in ourselves we can be ready for spirituality in practical life. How we can do that. Now that is difficult. That is usually difficult, because in our outer life, as we said yesterday, it is the ego which in the ego, the way in which Aurobindo used, I am told that the same word is used by different people for different things. For Aurobindo uses the word ego as an entity which is trying to balance the different planes of our consciousness, the physical, vital and mental, but the ego itself is made from these three components, from the physical, vital, mental, and therefore it is biased. So it is sometimes biased towards the mind, it is sometimes biased towards the body, it is sometimes biased towards the emotions. So it cannot do its work properly. Now, ego and egoism, mind you, are different things. People confuse the two. Egoism is an attitude that what I am thinking is right, my thinking is right, my attitude is right, my philosophy is right. That is egoism. That is not ego. Ego is an entity which is trying to balance these three things, and in the process it has got problems because it is not harmonious. It cannot do its work harmoniously. It is skewed in its functioning. It is biased in its functioning. So it is biased towards the mind. It is biased towards the intellectual ideas in some people. It is biased towards the emotions and vitality and dynamism and desires in some people, and in some people it is biased towards their bodily feelings, sensations and other things. Now, because of this problem, the ego was always considered to be our obstacle in personal growth. So what was the solution? What was the solution in Indian spirituality? In Indian spirituality, the solution was given that kick out the ego, let the ego go to hell. So that is what Brahma Brahma Satta Jagat Mitha. Jagat is the inferior nature, and the inferior nature revolves around the ego. So when we say, when this is said by this school of Vedanta, that the Jagat is Mitha, Brahma is Satta. What the meaning is this, that you have to go do away with the ego, and when you do away with the ego, you go to Nirvana, you go to the great void, you go to pure spirituality. You go to pure spirituality. That is very good. You leave out the ego, so you don't have to be troubled with the ego, which is so problematic. And then you see, ego was, you don't always see ego in a moral sense. Sri Aurobindo doesn't see ego in a moralistic sense. He sees the ego in a pure psychological sense. That is what Sri Aurobindo's uniqueness. He is not judging the ego in a moralistic viewpoint. He is judging the ego from a pure psychological viewpoint. That is an entity which is biased, which cannot do its thing. But when he was shown that Jagat Mithya Brahma Satta, then ego was also seen from all different viewpoints, including the moralistic viewpoint. And then you see the post-Buddha Buddhists, they were also very intelligent. They said, Jagat is Mithya. How do you know the Brahma is Satta? Everything is Mithya. So what is the truth? The truth is zero, 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 a great nihil. So what do? You see, both in the case of Jagat Mithya Brahma Satta, and if everything is Mithya, then the solution is that you get away from the ego and go to the great void. You can call that great void Nirvana, you can call that great void Brahman, anything. But what matters is that psychology has no place there. It is, you leave out the ego and you leave your personality to the dogs, you send it to the dogs, because without the ego you cannot hold your personality, because the personality is not there anymore to work in the world. That is the Jagat. Your personality working in the world is the Jagat. So you have dispensed with that, you have gone to the great void, you have gone to great spirituality, and psychology has no value. And that is why when I first started work on integral psychology, integral yoga psychology, a very, very great philosopher of psychology told me that, why are you wasting your time? Truly and fundamentally speaking, psychology has no place in spirituality. Doesn't mean, he is not speaking in a way that we don't talk about our abolition of our desires, abolition of our habitual thinking and all that. He accepts that. But fundamentally he said that, what is there? After all, you have to leave your ego, you have to leave your personality, you have to leave it to the dogs, and you have to go to the Supreme. So why do you waste your time? Why you want to bring spirituality into psychology and all these things? Now, this is a very important thing, that if something is not done really, and to hold back our being, because the moment you displace the ego, the personality is shattered, or the personality is no longer there to help you, so that nothing matters to you. So to have a meaning in life, so the spiritual meaning in life, to restore that, something else is needed. And this is for the first time Sri Aurobindo had given a solution. What was the solution? Sri Aurobindo had given a solution that because the ego cannot do its work properly, you replace the ego by something which is more harmonious, which is more positive, which is more unbiased, which is neutral, which is not skewed, which can come and do its work properly. If it can be harmonious, if it can be a truly neutral object, or entity, then your personality will be harmonized in a better way. You will not be able to suffer disharmony, and secondly, you will be able to have a higher living in the earth. You see that lower Prakriti was surrounding the ego. The higher Prakriti is beyond ego. The higher Prakriti was always talked about by great spiritual people, but not for ordinary people. The higher nature was not for that. But that higher nature you can work out in the lower nature. The higher nature can manifest in the lower nature. The spirituality can manifest in material life. If you can replace the ego by something else you have to bring in. Now, what was something else? That he called the psychic being. Now you will tell me that then why this was not earlier than sure in the Indian tradition. Actually, in the Indian tradition, we always have described the Jivatma. The Jivatma is behind us. No? The Jivatma is the soul that is beyond the manifestation. Is the soul principle. The soul has many poises. There is one poise of the soul that is holding us, but is beyond the manifestation. It is holding us. And then Sri Aurobindo describes that Jivatma also sends a projection inside us, into the manifestation. It sends a projection inside us. It is not It is not so cold and indifferent that it has let loose individual beings and without a support inside. So it has sent the projection inside, and that projection is in the form of a spark, and that spark you can develop into a being which is called a psychic being or Chaitya Purush, Antar Purush, and for that you have to develop that soul space or Chidakash which is inside you. You have to develop that space, and you have to, if you can develop that place, you can develop that space inside your consciousness where this soul presence, the projection of the Jivatma, it manifests. Then it can become an entity like as a psychic being, and then it can come forward. It can come forward and it can replace the ego. And you see, you don't have to fight with the ego. Last time we were saying that we fight with the ego, we will be exasperated because the ego is so difficult to fight with it. But if you bring the psychic being in front, then the ego will be delegated to its proper place or in the secondary place, or you don't have to worry about it. The main thing is that you have to replace the ego by someone who is more harmonious, someone who is more beautiful, someone who is more what we call productive, someone who is representing a higher consciousness. And the beauty of the psychic being is that because it is projected from the Jivatma, it has not come from below, from the inconscious. You see, all these things in our outer personality, they have evolved from the inconscious. It is from the inconscious that we have evolved. Our body has evolved, our emotions have evolved, our ego has evolved, our mind is evolving, everything is evolving from the inconscious. But the psychic being which is deep behind has not come from the inconscious. It has come from a very high superconscious plane. It is a projection of the Jivatma, which is different, which has never experienced the inconscious because it is superconscious per se, pure. So it is something which is very pure. It is a pure entity of light. It is there. It is a flame that is always burning. So that is that there we have to concentrate. So we will just try now to go deep inside ourselves and feel that is something inside, very deep. We will go deep inside and to see that we can concentrate on the center of the being. It will take a long time. It will not, you can't do it in one day if you are not habituated with it. Those who are habituated with it can immediately connect it. You can have the connection, but those who are not habituated, you have to practice that. But we just start practicing it, going to the center of the being. Now, going to the center of the being is difficult. Going to the center of the being is difficult because if I tell you that close your eyes and concentrate deep inside you, close your eyes and concentrate, we'll do that. But the moment I tell you that close your eyes and concentrate deep inside you, concentrate deep inside you, then what happens is, in many cases, we actually concentrate in the third dimension, the space where our viscera are kept. You see, there is a third dimension. There is a space inside which holds all our viscera, our heart, lungs, all our organs are being held in that space. So mostly we concentrate in that space which is holding all our viscera, and we go behind in the back places of that space or the region which is behind in that space, and we concentrate there. But still that is not enough. That is also not done. It is not reaching the psychic being because the psychic being is in the fourth dimension. It is in the fourth dimension. It is not in the third dimension. It is in the fourth dimension. It is not connected with us in the third dimension. It is behind, much behind. And then you have to gradually bring it in front. You have to gradually bring it in front. So we try to do that. I'll tell you that we are practicing this to concentrate, bring our consciousness into the center of a being. Trying to bring the consciousness into the center of a being, because the more we concentrate on the center of a being, the more we can harmonize the different parts of ourselves. And then remember, the other day I told you that in our outer personality, the mind, body and the emotions, they are very mixed together. You can't separate them. When you go deep inside your being, gradually you can separate the mind, body and the emotions, and you can understand that they are different uniqueness. The uniqueness of these three planes, you can never understand it outside in the surface personality because they are always mixed together there. Only when you go deep inside yourself, then you can understand that these three things are separate and they become manifest in their unique, distinct characteristics. Anyway, we'll start with that. Close your eyes and just try to concentrate Just try to concentrate deep inside your being. Just go behind your heart. Just go behind your heart, and you just try to concentrate on a space which is very, very deep inside your being, and that space might just be a space which is there full of light, empty space, or a space full of light, or a space which has a flame, which has a flame burning, or it is something there. If you can't do it, then you can picture your Ishta Devata there in that space. If that is difficult to have a flame, or imagine something a space with a light, you can also imagine your Ishta Devata in that space. So you just go deep behind. So when you go deep behind, I said it is behind your third dimension, and to bring your concentration to it is beyond the third dimension. So to bring your concentration beyond the third dimension, you have to just work on it. You just concentrate at the center of your being, and you see, when you have gone to the furthest extent, it was the furthest extent, then you have to go even further, like there is a gap between the last point you have reached and then what you are going to reach. There is a gap in space, like in outer space where the rockets go, no? One rocket is there, one spaceship is there, and another spaceship is there, and they're trying to reach from one spaceship to another spaceship through an empty space in the universe. It is just like that. When you have reached the furthest end of your inside, you may remember that mostly probably you have reached the end of your third dimension, and then you leave that, and you find that as if you are in a universe, you are in the galaxy, you are in the Milky Way, where you are trying to shift from one spaceship to another spaceship. So there is a gap of the universe in between. So like that, there is a gap between that and the fourth dimension, which is far, far behind, and you have to go to that space. So concentrate again, go to the depths of your being, to the center of your being, go behind your heart, and when you have reached the extreme end, most probably you have gone to the end of the third dimension, then you know that you have to go farther beyond, and to go farther beyond, you have to cross a space. Like you cross a space from a spaceship to another spaceship in a very high galaxy. Like that, you have to cross a space. And when you cross a space, you come to a place where something is there. Something is waiting there. Maybe a light is there. Maybe something, you can feel something very pure is there. Might be you are not seeing anything. You are just feeling that something is there which is very beautiful, which is something very pure. Or you are just feeling something, some essence is there. Or you might imagine that there is a fire burning there. There is a flame burning there. There is a flame. There is an inextinguishable, a flame which is not extinguished. There is a flame there. Or there is, if it is difficult to have the imagery of a flame, you can imagine the lotus. You can imagine there is a lotus there, or you can imagine the picture of the divine, or an image of the divine, or the image of your Ishta Devata, who is deep inside, that inside which is further than your deepest inside, going to the fourth dimension, which is beyond your sensory capacity, beyond the place where you have ever gone, and it is deep, so deep, and it is behind. And when you have gone there, just try to see, try to experience, try to feel. If you can't do that, if you are too intellectual, it might be difficult to see or visualize, but you will be able to feel, you will be able to conceptualize. If you are too intellectual, you might not be able to see the flame, but you can conceptualize that something is there which is different, which has a different kind of freshness, which has a different kind of feeling. And then when that is consolidated, let it come in front, you bring that in front, let that flame or that space or that light or that feeling of that consolidated space, let that come in front, gradually let it come in front. And while it is coming in front, you allow it to come in front, and while it is coming in front, your outer being and your inner personality. Last day we talked about the inner personality behind the outer personality. That the inner personality and the outer personality are getting fused, and when it is coming in front, it is coming in front, and gradually it will take over your being. It will be the leader of your being. It will become the leader of your being. So while it comes in front, the inner being which is standing behind your outer being, or if you can't conceive it, leave it. You don't have to concentrate on that. You just bring it in front. You just bring it in front and just consider that this is now going to be the leader of your march in life. The leader of your march in life. So you just concentrate there. Go deep behind your center. Again, if the image goes away, start again. Go to the center of your being. Go to the center of your being. Go to the extreme center of your being. And when you have reached the center, reach the last point. It might be that you have reached the third dimensional boundary. From there, there is a gap in space, and you go to the fourth dimension, which is far behind your sensory grasp, and there is that fire or that light or that your Ishta Devata, or there is a feeling of consolidation of something there. And now bring it in front, bring it in front, bring it in front. And while you are bringing it in front, if it is better, it will be very nice if you can conceive the inner being. If you can conceive the inner being behind the outer being, getting fused with the outer being, the two beings getting fused. If you can't do that, leave it. You just try to feel that it is coming forward to be the center of your activity in life, to be the center around which your activity will flower in life. So this is okay. You can open your eyes. You can open your eyes. It is a difficult exercise like that. Seems easy, but it is difficult. You have to practice it. You have to practice it very sincerely. And at one point of time, you see that suddenly there's something from deep inside your fourth dimension cannot come and replace the ego, because in between the ego and the outer being which is revolving around the ego and this fourth dimensional principle, you have the inner personality or the inner being. At one point, this inner being merges with the outer being. Now, what is very beautiful in this psychic being, because it has come from above, it is actually behind the heart lotus. Now, if you are acquainted with the chakra system, if you are acquainted with the chakras, there is a heart chakra, there is a Hridaya Padma, there is a heart chakra. And this psychic being of the fourth dimensional principle is behind the heart chakra. And if it comes forward, you don't have to concentrate separately on the heart chakra, because it will do the work of the heart chakra and it will do something more. Actually, it is something very different from the heart chakra. Now, heart chakra is that which is a bit in front of this of the psychic being, and it is at the junction of the inner being and the outer being. The chakras are at the junction of the inner being and the outer being. And this chakra, the heart chakra, what it does, it takes out the emotions from below and it purifies them. You see, the emotions and love that comes from below is always impure because it is coming from the inconscious. The heart chakra purifies that emotions. How it purifies? By detaching the love, detaching the emotions from the other parts of the system, like detaching it from the vital, detaching it from the body, detaching it from the mind. So it detaches them from all these hookings, and then it connects that love which has been detached from all the things with the cosmic love. It connects that love with the cosmic love. So it is a very, very great thing. The heart chakra is a very good thing. And though it is not spoken in that way, that the heart chakra is dealt in that way in everywhere, but everywhere it is the same phenomenon that occurs. Even in the case of Jesus, that was the universal love that he manifested or he brought down, was the cosmic love that he brought down. He could do it because at the level of the heart chakra, he could connect the love that comes from below with the cosmic love that was all around, and that is how he could bring love and compassion as his work, as a divine being. That was his work that has to be manifested. But the psychic being is different. It has come straight from the Jivarta projection, so it is intrinsically pure because it has not come from the inconscious. It has not come from the inconscious, so it has come from very high above, and it is intrinsically pure. And because it is intrinsically pure, when it comes forward, it automatically does the work of the heart chakra and surpasses the work of the heart chakra. It not only does the work which the heart chakra was doing, but it surpasses the heart chakra, and then it comes even more forward and takes the functions of the ego, so that it becomes, we can live a more harmonious life in the outer world. Now this is a very prime and important thing. Unless we are concentrate on the center of the being, we can't maintain the structure of our personality, because tomorrow we will be trying to work at different planes of consciousness on the mind, vital, which are much easier than this thing. It is much easier to concentrate there than on the things that we are doing now. That is much easier, but we will not be able to concentrate there unless the structure of the being is held by a truth of the being. Now, some truth has to hold as our structure, and this truth is there behind us, which is holding us, and this is that we have to bring in front. And then once we practice this, then the other things will fall in their place. Otherwise, they will seem to you to be disconnected, disjointed. I think I have exceeded my time. James has switched on the video, which means that this is a time for people giving questions and people giving what you call adding to what I have said, because for both for children and both for this meditation, other things are many of you are there who are also quite accustomed, and you might have got experiences on this.
So if anyone wants to ask some questions, please do so now, because
Good morning, am I audible?
yes, madam.
Hello? All right, okay. I tried earlier as well once, I couldn't get a response. Okay, so thank you so much, Dada. This was fascinating, very fascinating again. I think every session is worthy of a week-long workshop in itself. So much gratitude for this today. You talked about the importance of the vital and the soul sweetness, and you also talked about physical consciousness not having any hypocrisy, and also the emotions, there is a lot of turbulence and so on, also because of conditioning and the setting in itself and the education indeed. So but strangely there is this crazy obsession with the mind, and we kind of are so obsessed with the mind at the cost of the physical consciousness and the vital consciousness. Don't you think it's high time that the education system requires kind of a complete shake-up, and consciousness has to kind of come in center stage? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, of course, because you see, actually education in the world started from abbeys and monasteries and ashrams and gurukuls. So education actually started from a spiritual perspective. The whole concept of education came. Education started where? In ashrams and gurukuls and monasteries and abbeys. So it was there that the consciousness had to be developed, that was there. But then we got lost. We lost that essence of consciousness because we are busy building our superficial structure in the world. But to have a true education, you have to bring consciousness inside the system, and that you have to bring in a very different ways. You don't have to trumpet with the word consciousness, but you do it in such a way, in an indirect way, but the things will be such that it is consciousness which you will be enhancing and fostering. Like the role of true physical education. The role of true physical education is not only to have a very good body, otherwise we'll always be satisfied with going to the gym. That as a psychiatrist, very frequently I have to tell people not to go to the gym, because I see many young people with disturbed body images of themselves. They are wanting to go to the gym because they think that it is a kind of place where the body image will be as beautiful as they conceive, which will never be, and then they will suffer more from neurotic things. So all these things, that the body is to serve the divine, so the vital also has to serve the divine for a greater higher purpose. So that has to be brought in different ways, not directly. You cannot directly, you can do it, you cannot do it directly, then people will offer resistance to it. But in many indirect ways, you can introduce all these things in education, and you should include, otherwise this is the fate that we see today, that is happening all over the world. Of course, the father is a very important role. This question has been asked by Smitadi. The father is a very important role. I will tell you the father's role in a very practical way. Recently, for the last I think 5-6 years, in my private practice with psychiatric patients, I am seeing that in the absence of the father has unfortunately passed away at a very young age, or there has been a separation where the father doesn't keep contact. You see, in divorces, it doesn't mean that the father will not keep contact. In many divorces, the fathers keep contact with the children, but the father has or the father has just abandoned the family. I am seeing for the last 5-6 years that the family is totally shattered, totally shattered. It's not only financially, but everywhere, in every sphere it is shattered. And then I was thinking that why is this happen? Some people will always pass away at the age of 40, some people pass away at the age of 45, some people die at the age of 50. It was always there in the society, and it never happened in this scale before. And then I understood that today there is nobody to take up the father's role. Previously in big families in India, when a father passed away, there was one uncle or one brother-in-law or one somebody or the other was there in the greater family or in the among the relatives who used to come and take who has to inquire every week or every month that is everything going okay. Somebody used to take the role of the father, but that role is missing because the society or the family is shrinking in the society. So then I can understand that what is the role of the father, because the father is the person who gives security, and if the father cannot give that security, then it is a big part of the child's experience is being ignored. Father has definitely a very very big role, and is that mother is giving, we have given precedence to the mother because she is creating the child, but it is the aspiration of the father also. You see, I tell people, because I see children with sexual perversions from the age of 3 onwards, and the first thing that when I see children with sexual perversions at that very tender age, the first thing that strikes me that when the child was born, both their would-be parents had brought the child in lust. There was no aspiration to have a very beautiful soul. And so I always tell would-be parents, both the mother and the father, that even when you are trying for a child, because nowadays you have got you plan a child, and when you are planning for that, even at that time when you are trying to being a child physically, then also you should be in a mode of aspiration that we are trying to do this because we are wanting to bring a very good soul. So you see, the father's soul is very important. And then the father, of course, as I told you, is the symbol of security. And if that security cannot be provided nowadays by anyone else, because nobody is now ready to play the role of the father.
Am I audible, sir? May I speak?
Yes.
Am I audible, sir? Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Sir, very good, excellent. A great learning for me despite being in, psychiatry for 2 decades. This part of sensory training, in particular in infanthood and childhood. So you have given many examples. They are eye-opener. Can you suggest any book from either mother or someone else, modern psychological work, where we can find more work regarding integrating sensory experiences, where more illustrative examples are given?
Alright, I will try to contact you afterwards, because what I have been saying is collected from very different sources. Though in my book we will be giving something substantial will be there in my book, which will be published soon. But then I will also try to give you references. I will be in contact with you. Are you still in Chandigarh?
I am at Ahmedabad, sir. BJ Medical College, Ahmedabad.
You are still at Ahmedabad. Achha, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will be in contact, we will be in touch, and I will give you references when I find.
Right, sir. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes.
I would like to just suggest 2 books for the gentleman who had just asked this question about integral education. If you want to explore more about it and how we can train the small children into so many aspects of a being. So that
very
is
good, very good.
that is Mother on Education is an excellent book of how to give integral education to young children.
And the science of
Precise
living. Science of living in the corrected works.
Yeah, that Mother on Education and how to bring up a child also by mother only. These 2 books one can refer for small children, I would say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirulaji. Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
I have a question. Is it possible to hear me?
Hello?
Yes? Is it possible to hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you so much. I am a mother who tries very much to follow this philosophy with my children, and had them, had water births, and I nursed them for a long time and tandem nursed them, and while this flows really nicely, as I see them grow older and I work within the school a lot with teens, I see a growing disharmony amongst teens and young adults, which often manifests as depression and anxiety that is on the rise. And I'm just wondering how one can bring this philosophy, into these teens and young adults, especially when the forces of social media and a 24-hour news cycle and social isolation of the pandemic, all these aspects are more pronounced than perhaps before they were not exposed to it. But it is, common within schools, these forces, and, how to bring that philosophy to developmentally what's happening with teenagers and young adults.
So it's very true. To bring that is the challenge. That is the work that we have to do now. You see, today's work in the generation just preceded us. For them, when they were working with Sri Aurobindo, they were usually working with Sri Aurobindo's philosophy and Sri Aurobindo's metaphysics. But in today's generation, that was one work that was very interesting, very beautiful, and that was also very important also. But in today's world, that the stand of Sri Aurobindo's work will be tested if it is brought down into very practical levels, that is say, brought out in different aspects of life, in health, in education, in psychology, in management, everywhere. So these are things very important, that how do you stand the test of time in a world which is besieged by so many outer disturbances, outer disharmonies, which are, or outer disturbances like from social media to other things and all. So this is the work that we have to develop and we have to do. It is a process that you have to also participate, that you are also very interested in this question, so that you are also ready to participate in this work. But the main thing is that we have to start with our own small spheres. Start first working on ourselves, then only we can have a certain type of influence on others.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to ask a question?
Or to add something?
Yes.
So, I would like to ask a question, sir.
Yes.
Hello. So today's children are so distracted and addicted to technology. Is there any hope for that or any solution for that? Because they're not even ready to see any other perspective other than technology. Even if we introduce them to something, their minds are so distracted, their attention spans are so distracted. And that's the case with majority of the children today.
Now, if they are children, and definitely if they are exposed to very creative activities outside technology, they will definitely accept. But we don't have the people to present those things in that creative way. It is not that they will not do. We don't give them alternatives from a very high plane. So technology is very sophisticated, and you have to give something more sophisticated from the plane of creativity. So do you think that the ordinary people, ordinary teachers who are there supervising them, they will spend some time, even if they have that capacity? They don't do that. So that is something the best people have to come forward to be with the children. Of course that they will be sensitive to other things also. And remember that in technology, for example, the children spend more time in this social media, more time in the internet, in cyberspace. And in cyberspace, that time gets wasted actually. And then you have these games of blue whale and all that. All these things are possible. Why these things happen? There are two reasons for this. One is that when you see, instruments also attract us as we get attracted to instruments. So there is a two-way process that goes away. That is ergonomics. No? The science of ergonomics has shown that we are not only attracted towards the machine also attracts us. And in the middle, a space is created where that space can be exploited. So we are actually creating a space where the machine is also attracting. It is not only that the children are getting attracted to the technical machines, but the machine is also attracting them. So then we have to find out ways that we can how to bypass that and to give them other alternatives, which we don't do that because we don't have time for that. And the second thing is that when you enter the cyberspace, you see you don't have the protection of the natural space that is with you. We all have a natural, private and a public space with us. For example, if you are in a metro or in a train or in a public bus, there is a lot of crowd, but you don't mind because you are going to get down at the next stop. But if you are in an empty room and somebody comes and is very close to you, you might feel uncomfortable. So you have a private space and a public space. You see, even dogs of one lane don't go to the other lane because they are also conscious of the space. But when you enter the cyberspace, because you are not organized around yourself, you get distracted and disorganized. You get distracted, and not only distracted, you get disorganized. And at that time, any weird suggestion in the social media, you can take it up. For that, the children have to be organized, and for the organization of the children's personality, you need to have a program from the very beginning with this physical, vital, mental thing. If you start doing that, if you start organizing their consciousness, is a separate thing we start in school. We don't have to emphasize on the technology, don't have to say yes or no about that. But side by side, we do this work of organizing the personality around a coherent principle. Then you see that things are going to change. They will not, even if they enter, they will not get distracted or dissociated, and they can have a boundary, and they can have the sense where they can return back to their other things in life which are also more important than the technical things. So it's our whole way of perceiving things that has to change.
May I add something?
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, if you really look at the way a child acquires things, for example, first I will talk about food. Food habits, like they have changed in last 2 decades because at home, family also started experimenting with junk foods. And junk food is always a commercial sort of thing. They work in laboratories for years and years to prepare something which is quite tasty. And by biological study, we know sugar, salt and fat are always tasty, and yummy taste would come through that. Equally, when we go in the media, I have 2 children, and that is the question which disturbs me also. Infant passively watch TVs, and later on these gadgets and the programs which they play on the iPads and mobiles are very interactive, damn interactive. Each and every moment they have an opportunity to respond. And unfortunately, we do not find anything right now which a parent can do or can get from the market or can go somewhere where that level of interactivity is possible. So the dopaminergic system, which really hooks us and which is very addictive, I failed to find for my children to get the things which would be more powerful to distract them from what dopaminergic sort of excitation they are having through video games and iPads and all that. Thank you.
This is true.
So, shall we wrap up? Does anyone else have anything else to say or ask? If not, we'll meet again tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock for the final session of Integral Perspectives of Mental Health. Okay, so we'll meet again, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning, and See you all there.